Money Vikings, welcome back. Money Viking Greg here. In this video today, I'm going to talk exactly why I am adding to Bitcoin positions now. And I'm going to just sort of put it all together from a high level view. I'm not going to bore you guys with any deep dive techno talk in terms of Bitcoin. I want to talk about the macro, big picture things happening that are making me see a buy signal right now. And I'm going to talk also about the trick in terms of investing and buying Bitcoin that I've disciplined myself to do over the years, which has worked out quite well. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm going to play a couple of clips from this guy over at Crypto Tips. Very good commentary. You can see he's doing pretty well. He's riding through Venetian canals in a gondola, so that's pretty cool. That's maybe his Bitcoin's done very well for him. But one of the biggest things he talks about is the fact that so much money is being printed and the devaluation of your money over time. And this is something that is the number one macro thing I want to talk about in terms of this Bitcoin moment, because this is the moment where it sort of is all coming together. And let me give you a little bit quickly history in terms of how I arrived at Bitcoin. So I started investing in Bitcoin about 7 years ago. Jerry did introduce me to it. And I was very skeptical at first. At first I was like, what is it that underpins this? I was very much into, Warren Buffett style investing, which I still am. I do not swear that off. I am fully diversified, so full disclosure, I do not believe in, I'm not throwing everything into Bitcoin. I don't think that's the way to go here for me, okay? So nothing about this, as we know, is financial advice. This is just what I'm doing. I'm just sharing what I am doing. And so with that, I have steadily increased my position. I used to have a 1 to 2% rule. I seem to be bumping that up lately as of all the different events that are happening on the macro level, which we'll get into. I'm starting to get more into that 5-10% of asset zone now with Bitcoin because, I definitely have seen the writing on the wall and I've come around to many of the arguments and the points. So the big picture one is just about how expensive it has become to live. And there's just no denying that. There's no denying the fact that over the last 50, and then I'm not talking about the last 3-4 years. I'm talking about the last 50 years, last 40 years. There's been a lot of things that have resulted in increased inflation. I'll put this over here so we don't get distracted by this guy's face for a minute. But anyway, the point being, inflation is really nothing new. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that, inflation just started happening. Not true. The price of college has been inflating for decades. The price of housing has gotten out of control, especially since after the Great Recession and then after the pandemic, when housing just skyrocketed due to supply and demand imbalances. And I just see the cost of living. I don't know if it's going to get better anytime soon. It may take a long time. Things like housing, very hard to add a bunch of housing stock overnight. It takes years. It's a years in the making thing. And same goes for all the things that we buy and sell. So the bottom line is that you can see from a macro level, there's a big concept of wanting to have an asset that can retain hold value over the long run and can keep up with the dollars that seem to lose value and then all of the risk in the stock market. Now, I still believe in the stock market. I still believe in real estate, investing in, diversified portfolios, I think is definitely the way to go. But, we just have to look at different asset classes. And that's why I'm adding to Bitcoin. I'm going to play a little bit of videos here and let's listen to what
90 days. And eventually that number is going to get down to every month. And eventually that's going to get down to every single day. Can you imagine how bad inflation is going to be? And there's nothing that's going to stop that, okay? There's nothing. You can't vote your way out of it. It's finished. So that's why you need Bitcoin. That's why we discuss this. And check out this chart right here that he shares. Really interesting, isn't it? Look at that freaking hockey stick, man. I mean, I can't help but chuckle because it's just so ridiculous.
So he's talking about the national debt, which has really ballooned out of control. And again, this isn't something that started 3 or 4 years ago. People don't actually understand the history of this, and I'll be quick about it. The quick history of it is there used to be something called pay as you go, and that was, I believe, started under the under the Reagan administration or the Bush administration. And the pay as you go rule was that if the federal government and the Congress increased spending in one area, or let's say there was a war, they would either decrease spending in another area or they'd raise taxes in some way. So there was a pay as you go balancing act going on. Well, we went to war in the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, and my understanding is Herbert Walker Bush then raised taxes, and there was a campaign promise to not raise taxes. He famously said, "Read my lips, I will never pay taxes." And he did, and he got voted out of office. And then, Clinton came in, and it's, I'm not saying it's any party's or president's fault, but from there, different things happened historically. For example, there was the global war on terror in 9/11. And my understanding is it was one of the first times there was a war, protracted long war, without any kind of tax increase or cuts anywhere. So anyway, that's just the quick story of all this. That again, the deficit and the budget issues have definitely blown out of proportion quite a bit. And I actually did some work in the past, in a past life, on some of the budget stuff. So I know a little bit about that. There was also the spending caps. I think they're called the Gramm-Rudman spending caps as well. And there was the Congress was trying to enforce limits on its own spending. So this brings us to the modern era of something like Bitcoin. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Okay, so now let's go over to the mainstream media, which always has your back, right? So let's go over to Jim Cramer. He says Microsoft will never buy Bitcoin. Well, just the other day, Michael Saylor to present to the Microsoft board next month about buying Bitcoin for its corporate treasury. So looks like everybody's going to be hopping on it. It's a shame that Microsoft didn't have the foresight like we did. And,
So I want to talk about that. He makes a great point, and that's one of the reasons I'm adding to Bitcoin right now, is because of these large company and large institutional and large government adoption that is now going to be happening and is happening as we speak. So I think a lot of the floodgates came loose with the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. So, but my understanding before is that the ETFs that were, Bitcoin related were basically trading Bitcoin futures, whereas I don't believe they actually owned any Bitcoin. So my understanding is the new ETFs are going to own Bitcoin. The ETFs put Bitcoin in a nice little package for retail investors and, the grandparents and the parents and the retirement systems to buy exposure to the asset. So, that shows you something. When those huge companies and huge powers like BlackRock and others are now entangled in this asset, that's why I claimed about a week or so ago on one of my videos, I asked the question, and I'm kind of stating it, is Bitcoin too big to fail now? And in a lot of ways it is. And we also know that the recent presidential election was a big change. So a lot of things changed with that. We now have an incoming administration that's apparently going to be very friendly to Bitcoin. So these are all bullish signals, all of them. So let me add a couple other items for your thought today. What I've found with Bitcoin is that I have to have a certain amount of discipline. I have to discipline myself to do this. I have to discipline myself to buy as it's going down and when it's lower, and to hold. That's the key. We can chase it up a bit, but as it's going down, those in my mind are the times to buy it. And it sounds easier said than done. But the other thing I'm thinking is that it does seem to be early days. Yes, you're not buying it at $10,000, $20,000, whatever. You're buying fractions of it. But adding fractions and adding a certain position to a portfolio, I still think is going to add something to that portfolio. I think it's going to juice it a little bit that it wouldn't have had with traditional investments. So that's why I'm adding some. And again, I'm going to be in that 5 to 10% range. So, at this point, my last question is, why not Bitcoin? I mean, it really is becoming something like a world kind of currency, place to store value beyond gold. I mainly see it as digital gold, and I know it's more than that, but I do believe that that's what it is. You're parking the dollars in something that's finite and will go up in value over time. So with that, what do you guys think? Am I crazy? Am I losing it? I don't know. Let me know. I do like to stress test all ideas, and that's why I was a slow adopter. I heard about it 7 years ago, started doing research, slowly have come around to it. Again, I'm not going to bet my whole future on it, but is it a way for a middle-class investor like me to juice the portfolio a little bit and get a little extra gains over some time? Yeah, I kind of think it is now. I really do. So with that, thanks guys. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that great stuff as we grow the channel. I do appreciate it. See you on the next one. Take care.